All right, so
His house looked like shit.
how I kind of know about Frank DiMatteo is the book you got me for Christmas. He wrote this other book called about Albert Anastasia called The Lord Hyde Executioner. And, like, the Albert Anastasia story is great because it kind of ends where, like, the beginning of Gallo picks up. Because Albert Anastasia,
Joe Gallo was a shooter in that, right?
Joe Gallo, Larry Gallo, and Carmine
Persico
were the three shooters.
Do we want to drop the Carmine Persico news on him?
We can drop it. That Carmine Persico, the snake Carmine Persico, was actually an informant for the
but
FBI.
It just seems like it wasn't all the way confirmed, though.
Yeah.
But that would be crazy because I almost called him Jake the Snake. Carmine the Snake.
Well, it's crazy because, one, in this book, Carmine Persico plays a large part. He was very close to Joe Gallo.
Yeah.
Albert Anastasia, he was the boss of kind of like the Brooklyn docks. And it's interesting because right now I work at Steiner Studios, which was part of the Brooklyn Navy Yard that, like, Albert Anastasia controlled. And you see Joe Gallo, his older brother Larry, and Carmine Persico, they get made into the mafia by killing a boss. And I think that's interesting that kind of like their first introduction into the mob was killing the boss. So, like, they kind of have a baseline introduction that these people are not invincible. And that these rules that they're kind of handing down from up far are made to be broken. Of just like, you've told me that you're not supposed to kill bosses.
And
but my first job as a made man is I'm going to kill a boss.
I mean, like, it's just funny because everybody always talks about, the mafia is not what it used to be, which is obviously true with, like, not only just surveillance, but even before that, the RICO Act being set up.
Right.
But, you know, at the same time, it's like these guys whacked a boss, like, back then. Like, the rules were never the rules.
And Albert Anastasia whacked his own boss. And that same year, Frank Costello, who's the boss of the Genovese family, Vito Genovese tries to murder him, and he gets away with it. So we know that year of 1956, there's an assassination on one boss and an attempted assassination on another. So Joe Gallo and Larry Gallo are starting their criminal careers knowing that these guys are invincible. And the basic, like, theme...
Our dad was born in 1956. That's why I said shout out to our dad. I just didn't want that to go, like...
under the radar?
Or just, like, why did he say that? Anyway, go. Now that I fucked up your flow.
We come into kind of a culture on President Street, which is where the Gallows, where their, like, headquarters was, of not only are these people not invincible, but, like, there are their rules and their kind of decrees that, like, the bosses made themselves seem like they were these mythic figures of just, like, they were controlling everything up high and, like, they were the word of God. And we know from a fact that that's not true, and the Gallo brothers are saying, why do we have to listen to these people?
Yep.
We're going to do whatever they want, and...
They're just like Gotti later on.
Just like Gotti later on. Just kind of like Roy DeMeo. And one of the great things about Frank DiMatteo, he's kind of describing this all as he's a little kid. Yeah. He's a little kid watching these guys, and you see he has you have, like, kind of the basic setup of the President Street crew, and one of, like, the rules of the mob is, like, made guys are above everybody else, so you have to treat made guys better. And they're very clear with the President Street boys. Nobody cared if you were made or not. Of, like, and
some people didn't want to be made because they didn't want to have obligations to certain people.
Well, that's exactly Frank DiMatteo's father, Ricky, was one of the highest ups in the gang. He was not made. But the way they saw it, it was like, we don't really like the bosses to begin with. What, like, you're going to be above me because the bosses say so? I don't even like those guys, you know? And another one of the rules was kind of like Italians would always get special privileges among non-Italians. And Larry and Joe and Albert, the old three Gallo brothers, were very much against that. A lot of the members of their crew were Greek. A lot of them were Arab.
Black
They were black.
Jewish.
They kind of had an alliance with the like black gangs who ran like the Gowanus projects. Later on, Joey Gallo would have an alliance with Nicky Barnes, who was the big-time heroin dealer in Harlem. And that was another thing of, like, they were going to sell drugs if they wanted to.
Again, which is, like, you know, just, like, destroying the myth of, like, what the mafia ever was. Like,
well, here's where...
As far as, like, not supporting drugs.
The myth of saying that, like, the mafia was against selling drugs.
Yeah.
Like, how it's portrayed... How it's portrayed, like, in The Godfather.
I think that's our first burp ever on the show.
I think I heard a fart.
This is the first
time.
Did
you hear a fart?
Well, because I'm drinking
James
a
is in the
seltzer
house.
while I'm doing this.
James is always in the house
I got
now.
Carbonation in my voice.
That's pretty good. Episode 29, the first burp. This is this is not 29.
We are past 29.
We're
at 31. This is 31.
Is it 31?
This is 31. We didn't do anything for our 30th episode last time.
I was going to say, next episode is our 30th, but we already passed
it.
All right. Just like me, past 30.
One of the like myths of the mafia was that they were against selling drugs. They were above that. The truth of the matter is the bosses told their underlings not to sell drugs because the bosses wanted the entire drug business to themselves. That's the truth of the matter. The mafia was founded off of heroin. Lucky Luciano was the biggest heroin dealer in America. People say that, like, Carlo Gambino actually wasn't involved in drugs, but, like, who knows if that is true or not?
Well, it's like I remember in Al DeMeo, Roy's son. Did you read that book?
Yeah, Sins of My Father. I've read it.
Yeah,
yes.
And so, you know, the thing there was like Paul Castellano, like, trying to be a fucking legit business guy, and it's like, you know, he knew they were selling drugs. He knew he was lining his pockets off of heroin sales. Right. But you know, when they all went down in that heroin case, Gene and I'm blanking on the other guy's name from Quack.
Yeah.
From Long Island, like Castellano was, you know, making fucking a fortune off of that shit.
Right, exactly.
And acting holier than that.
Exactly.